Today's episode is a little different because this is our 100th episode of the Sober Life Rocks podcast. And instead of a traditional interview, I wanted to sit down with someone who understands what it actually takes to build something in this space, not just to get sober, but to show up consistently and create something that reaches people. So today we're going behind the scenes, what it really takes to grow a podcast, what it really feels like to share your story publicly, and what happens when your voice starts reaching more people than you ever expected. If you've stepped away from drinking or the things that used to numb you, you know it changes your life. But it changes the people watching you too. You become quiet proof that something better is possible. On Sober Life Rocks, we talk with people who realize that their choice wasn't just personal, it was a platform, a chance to be a leader, to shorten somebody else's learning curve, to do something that really mattered. If you felt that pull, you're in the right place. Subscribe and stay with us. Welcome back to Sober Life Rocks. I'm Margy, and today feels really special. 100 episodes. And if I'm honest, when I started this, I didn't actually know what it would become. I mean, honestly, I didn't even listen to podcasts, so I didn't have any idea. But I knew I wanted to have conversations that mattered. And over time, it's become something much bigger than that. So today, I wanted to do something different. Not just another story, but a conversation about what it actually takes to build a voice in this space. So today's guest is someone who knows what it means to build something that reaches people. Brad McLeod is the host of the Sober Motivation podcast, one of the most widely listened to shows in the sober space, reaching hundreds of thousands of listeners and building a global community around real, raw conversations about sobriety. But what I'm interested in today is not just what he's built, it's how. Because none of this starts big. Brad, welcome to the program, and thank you for being part of this celebration.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you just outlined there, all of the work that goes into 100 episodes, huge congrats
Thank
on
you.
sticking with it and making it happen.
Thank you. And so, with that in mind, I just want to pause for a second because this is episode 100, and I didn't want to
Right.
just say that and move on. Um, and I even grabbed a bottle of free alcohol, non alcoholic champagne to be able to celebrate this moment with. So, while we get started, I'm going to open this and take a little celebratory sip. So, just thank you so much for being here with me. It felt like the only appropriate way to start this conversation. So, let's just start. I kind of want to understand the short version. Who is Brad? And bring us to the point up to where sober motivation started.
Yeah, of course. Feels like we're having a little virtual party here. I love
We
it.
are, we are.
Yeah, I mean, the short version, that's tough, but I'll break it down for you. I mean, I was born in Canada. My mom was 16. She had twins. When I was 6, we moved to Texas. She was a nurse, got a job down there. And that's kind of really when I highlight things, really making a shift in my life of leaving Canada with all the support, my grandparents
Oh
helping
no.
out. Um, and my brother and I, trying to find our way, right? It was a new place or trying to make friends and do all that stuff. And that's when I really started to struggle, anxiety, ADHD,
Here
everything.
comes
That
the
thing is
ADHD, and I'm about to pop the cork.
it's gonna go through the ceiling there. I've done that before. Um, and that's when things really, when I dial it back, when I really started to struggle, with behaviors and struggling in school and everything. And I think it just took a big toll on my self-esteem, confidence, really wondering where I belonged in the world. Went to rehab for the first time. I mean, I got in all kinds of trouble. I was getting arrested, and I went to rehab for the first time when I was 17. I went for a year to this wilderness program. My parents just had private security detail pick me up from my second hospital stay. And after that, I left that. I did well for a bit. I got into college. I got a car. I got my first apartment. I got my first job. Things were going well. But then I sort of adopted the idea that I was kind of cured in a sense, not exactly thinking like that at the time, but like, yeah, this is, things are good, right?
I got it. I got it
Um,
wired.
yeah. And I think that was difficult for somebody like me because you would think being successful, to everybody or things going well would be good. But my whole life, things were not going well. That was my comfort zone. That's what I was used to. So things going well was very uncomfortable for me. Like, wow, you're actually doing what, you should be doing. And I think I retreated and I didn't know any of this at the time, but I think I just retreated to what was comfortable and what I knew. And I got introduced to prescription pain medication. I got introduced to
Mm.
drinking. I got introduced to cocaine. And I mean, it just quieted all of the noise. It just made a whole ton of sense. It checked all the boxes. I was able to fit in, have confidence, self esteem, talk to girls, um, and just had a sense of belonging. And it was
Yeah.
just cool. Celebrated for the party guy, the risk taker. Developed this identity of that. I mean, we used to go out and party every night. Um, in my early teenage, late teenage years, we partied every night and didn't blink an eye. I worked at this restaurant. I would get from this restaurant. My buddies would be over at my place. I'd walk in the door. They'd throw me a beer. I'd go take a shower and probably have 3 beers before we even warmed up for the night. But looking back, I was doing that because I was so uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But at the time, you only know what you know. So kind of fast forward, I mean, I got started with the prescription pills and then got introduced to heroin. Most of us at that time made that sort of switch, and drinking was always a constant thing in life. Always plugging into that. I worked in like I said, the restaurant space, and then I used to, work at a Michael Jordan Nissan car dealership for a little bit, and all this stuff kind of got me warmed up to all of this. I was often around older people too, right? The restaurant gig and car dealership, a lot of people that drank and did all this stuff for a lot longer than I did. It just all seemed pretty normal. Like I believed that I would just snap out of it. One day an opportunity would come along or a relationship would come along and I would say, okay, it was fun, but let's just walk away from it. I went to a detox in South Florida a little bit after that, probably when I was like 20. Um, did well. And then I really leaned into drinking there for a bit though, because I got off kind of, people say the harder stuff. I mean, geez, all hard. But the harder stuff. And I was just like, well, I'll just drink. But then I was drinking 20 beers a day. And that's just what I did. I just would just drink and, life just
It's a
wasn't
lot of
good.
work.
Yeah. It was a lot of work. Yeah. And I was just living so like less than my potential. But when you surround yourself with people and that's what they do and it's normal, you really like you start to believe that's what everybody does. I was just like, gosh, everybody does this. Like this is great. Um and then I got arrested for the last time in January 11th, and there's a long story to it, but people could always tee that up somewhere else. But I got off an airplane in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was arrested and in charge with drug trafficking. A few years prior, I had sold stuff to an undercover police officer. I went to jail for a year, and after that, I was deported back to Canada with a lifetime ban and sort of a choice. Like, I kind of saw my life at that point as like, this is what it will always equal.
Mm.
It was kind of like the denial in that sense kind of slipped away. I wasn't necessarily connecting the dots, but the denial was like, this will always be your result. I mean, I just rode things
When you've
until the
been banned,
wheels.
when you've been banned from a country, that seems like something that would get your attention. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, crazy enough, it probably wasn't that in the moment, but it was just the life of jail where people tell you when you can eat, when you can use the bathroom, showering. Like this, I really had a reflection of how do I want to live my life, and I just in that moment, up until then, I was kind of okay with it, but in that moment and in those months to follow, I wasn't okay with that way of living anymore. And then, kind of further down the road. So that's when my whole recovery journey started. And then I went back to Canada a year later or so. I went back to college to be an addiction counselor and worked in a rehab for 6 years. And then sort of brings us up to like this whole sober motivation thing.
okay, so I know a lot of people who, when they get sober, they're so compelled to want to do something to help other people, to be part of this amazing new life that they have, and they go into addiction counseling, and then they get burned out because it's a
Yeah.
tough place to be. Was that kind of your experience?
Yeah, I mean, after the 6 years too, the fentanyl had kind of crept on the scene. I worked with teenagers too, so 14 to like 18,
Mm,
19.
mm,
So there was that there was that difficulty there as well. And we started to lose people. And two guys that I worked closely with, and they would stay for 6 months, and two guys I worked closely with and knew their families and everything about them. But they passed away. I mean, they overdosed, and it was these guys were just full of life, right? This kind of the stigma out there, right, of like who this happens to, and these guys were full of life, and it was happening more and more, and we were going to more and more funerals, and I was just like, wow, I mean, this was never part of my experience. It's not something they teach you in schools about how this could all play out, and the circumstances were brutal. Just sort of the details and
mm.
how close they were to maybe turning things around or coming. One of the guys was due back at the program the next day and just kind of went out for one last thing. But it's a very real thing. It is very real because it's heavy work, and you think too. Maybe from the outside, somebody going to treatment. I mean, obviously they want to change, right? Well, no, they, they might want to, but that's only a little piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
because there's a cost involved. And when I say cost, I don't mean dollars and cents, but there's effort. There's
Mhm.
tough, really, really tough and hard stuff that you have to be willing to plug into and learn. And not everybody's there just because, they're living somewhere.
So, how how did you pivot from that to starting a podcast? And
Yeah. I mean,
what did you think that was going to be?
yeah, the podcast or,
Yeah.
oh, I thought it was just going to be me in my basement talking to myself. I mean, I started sober motivation too, and like all this online stuff. My wife was pregnant with my first daughter. I have three kids now, but this is my first daughter 8 years ago. This is always the timeline I can remember. And I went into work at the center, and I was a clinical caseworker at the time. And I'd been thinking for a while I needed to do something different, but it's tough when you go to college for one specific thing and then you're just like, I don't want to do this one thing anymore. It's like, wow, what the
Now
heck do
what?
you do? Right. But I was like, I don't know, maybe I could share the story. Maybe I could help people. Maybe I could do something sort of in the digital space of things. And maybe have more flexibility in my life and blah, blah, blah. All of these things that I was thinking. So I went into his work this one day and I just quit. No notice, nothing. I just quit. I was at the point where I don't know what the future holds, but I just know I can't do this for another second.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of when I started online. I started a Facebook group first. It was called Recovery for the Beginner. And I used to just, I don't know, chat with people, have live video. That was kind of a thing back then. Have live video and just have chats and bring topics and see what people think and, all that stuff. It wasn't well, it definitely wasn't a business model. It was more of a volunteer thing. And on the other side of it too, but we didn't have any money. So I had to, kind of figure out other things to kind of do. But I started to kind of grow a little bit. Um,
Can I
and
stop you for there? How? How did you grow?
so, I mean, the tools are all different in how things kind of work. But I mean, a big part of this, I think, was word of mouth and sort of people, being interested in maybe sharing that group with other people who would want to get help or sharing it, with people or on Facebook or, making videos like every day. I did that. I did that like literally for a year and um, didn't charge any money for anything. When I look back, I'm like, gosh, how did I even survive that? But we figured out there were many times where I said, this is ridiculous. And of course, people around you, like where I was anyway, 8 years ago, come on. I mean, you're having your first kid, man. I mean, so many people had a conversation with me. Yeah, you're having your first kid, dude. Like, what are you doing
What are you
fooling
doing?
around with this Facebook stuff? Like, you got to give your head a shake, man. And I was like, gosh, I don't think they're completely wrong, but like maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something here. So I just kind of stuck with it, and I used to cut grass and shovel snow from driveways and flip Amazon pallets. And I mean, you make wooden signs and all kinds of stuff in between.
Wow. So from there, what was the next sort of step?
Yeah, I mean, from there, I mean, kind of bringing us up to the podcast, I really figured out through all of that. I had sort of this niche or ability to help people grow an audience, right? Storytelling, building an audience, using the tools that were available for them. And I started to get hired by a lot of brands, different mobile app companies, different centers, creating content. Have all these sort of referral. I never had a website or anything, and this the referral opportunities. And people were happy with the work, and they were just like, "Wow!" I mean, we've paid way more money for this type of stuff that goes absolutely nowhere. So this was great. So I kind of found my little niche in that, um, type of thing. And then, I used to work for this company, Sober Buddy, too. And then we had an app, and, we grew it to 150, 250,000 downloads too. And, things didn't work out in the end, but it was a great journey, to go on. And, that's kind of when like the podcast started to go, I think probably about 4 years ago. And I had this idea. I had gotten podcasting equipment like 2 years before that. I told my mom, I said, for Christmas, Mom, get me this podcasting stuff. So she got me this stuff. It was just overly confusing, and I never did anything with it. It just sat on a shelf. And then I had this other idea of like, hey, maybe I just start this podcast. And I didn't know what I was doing. I sat down for my first recording. Nothing worked. Couldn't get the audio. And tell Buddy, hey man, sorry, dude, nothing even works. I don't know. We gotta figure it out. And I don't know. I just kind of enjoyed that. I didn't really have this big game plan. I didn't research anything about podcasting. I didn't come to the table with any questions. I've 270 episodes. I've never come with a plan. We just kind of go. Um, and I don't
It's
know,
so interesting.
people.
When I first started, um, my business partner and I at Sober Life Rocks, Laura, she is a professional speaker. She loves getting on stage. She got sober on TikTok. Like she's just all out there. And here was me who hadn't told anybody except for in my recovery community for 18 and a half years. And
Yes.
she's like, I think you ought to start a podcast. I'm like, A, I haven't even told anybody this in my life. B, I've never listened to a podcast. And C, are you out of your mind? And so I bought this little Yeti podcast microphone, and
Yeah.
I sat down and turned on Zoom and was like, okay, now what? And my very first
Yes.
episode was her coming on and interviewing me about my story. And my second interview was me then interviewing her about her story. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I got to figure this thing out now. I mean,
Yeah. It's so interesting how we start, like just go for it.
go for it. And one of the things that I've learned, and I'd love to hear you kind of talk about this, was how you evolve from just going for it and then kind of what happens along the way that helps you see what resonates, to see what your passion is about, to see how people respond to things. Like, talk to me about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking with somebody else who is considering starting a podcast today. Um, I think so often we get in our own way. I notice in a lot of the interviews, there's a lot of perfectionism tied to struggling with drinking, and things have to be perfect. And there's a lot of pressure maybe growing up to do well here and do well there, sports, education. And I see that sort of shift over to like the sober life of being unsure if we're going to get it right or if it's going to be perfect. And that sort of thing keeps people stuck and they never go after what they want to go after. And I think it really boils down to we're just worried about what other people are going to think about us, whether we admit that or not. I think that's a big part of what is at the core. I
Did
think
you
what you're,
struggle with that?
uh, I don't know if I think that far ahead. I mean, I think at times that's something you have to work through because when you go out there and you express your opinion, if you're not trying to be best friends with everybody, but speak your truth, there's going to be people who don't agree with it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've definitely had to work through that with people from certain communities say that what I put out there is going to kill people and that it's terrible to charge money for anything and that this is just you're the worst person in the entire world. So yeah, I mean that is something in the sober space you have to work through. And then I kind of peel the curtain back, like no wonder we're limited with options because anybody who tries to do something, it's like here you go, here comes the cavalry, right? To knock you back down for everything that you're doing wrong, and all of this stuff out there is free. So yeah, I mean I've definitely had to you know, internally, and you have to get support and help with this stuff. People on the internet don't know me and everything I do. So my wife has been a great support for that. For like
Yeah.
who are you? Like, is this stuff true or is this? And it's not true.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
remember I got sober in AA and, I credit that program for all the things that got me to where I am today.
uh,
Um, and today it's not a perfect fit for me, and that's okay. It's an option that I can always go back to if that's what I need to do. But I did get this pushback from people in that community to be like, "Hey, I can't believe you're charging for this stuff.
yeah,
Like that's so wrong and it's against the principles." And it was just an interesting conversation to have to navigate through.
yeah, yeah. It is. And to me, it's like teach their own. Whatever works and whatever anybody wants to be involved with, or it's all good. I mean, the hardest thing I had with it was I would never go to anybody and say what they're doing is wrong.
Hmm.
I would never do that. And in my
Hmm.
mind, I have a hard time understanding why that people come and say what I'm doing is wrong or what other people are doing is wrong. Like why? And these people don't have any perspective of like literally the thousands of hours that I've put into helping people and would never accept a penny or expect a penny from them. And I know that they have their things that they do to give back, and that's beautiful. I love it. But thousands of
Yeah.
hours to help people, like just to do the right thing. And
You know what's
probably so yeah.
you know what's so cool is that, when I got sober in 2005, like there was one option, treatment and AA. That was it.
Yeah.
And today there are so many ways that people can work to have curiosity and question their relationships with alcohol. Those
Yeah.
things are still there and they're bedrocks, but there are coaches, there are communities, there are podcasts, there's Quitlet. I mean, gosh, let's celebrate all the
Yeah.
ways that people can access and learn about and normalize. I mean, that to me is joyous. Like I can't believe the world we live in now. We're so privileged to live
Mhm.
in this world today.
Yeah. 100%.
But let me ask you this. You started your podcast 2022.
Yeah.
Were there many sober podcasts back then? I know there were some, but were there many that?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. There was quite a few. Um,
And
there
so,
was,
how did that feel to you? I mean, I know people today I talk to all the time who are like, I don't know, are there so many out there that I should even bother?
yeah.
So, kind of, how did you approach that headspace of like coming into the space and wondering if there was a place for your podcast?
Yeah. Interesting. Hey, that is so great. I mean, what a kind of barrier to get things started. I look at everything maybe in a weird way. I don't think McDonald's cares that there's, Joe's Burger Shack down the street. I think they open up their restaurants wherever they want to open up their restaurants, and they're going to find their people. And that's really the way I go into it with everything. I mean, I think in today's world, no matter what it is that you want to do, there's going to be 100 other people or more that are already doing it, So I never really paid any attention to what, everybody else was doing. I just kind of just was like, let me just find my way, fail forward, stumble, learn. And I think one of the most undervalued things for me anyway, in doing this podcast, I love it that it helps other people. I love it that the guests get to share their story, but I learn so much and get to meet so many people. And I would, from where I sit, that's the coolest thing. I think everybody should have a podcast talking about what they love, learn, connect with people, build your network. It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
It's one of my favorite things. I feel so privileged that I get to meet people like you and spend 45 minutes and just kind of have these human moments.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. So, when did you realize that people were actually listening?
Oh, I would like to say from day one, but no, it definitely wasn't. I got this email, kind of chokes me up a bit. I got this email from someone, and they just shared that, like, this show was helping them. And I think that's when that's kind of when it made sense.
Yeah. What a beautiful moment.
Yeah. It's, yeah, it's kind of wild because you put it out there and you're just like, it's just me. And it wasn't at this house. It was at my last house, and it just me hanging out in the basement, just, you just connecting with people. And then, people start listening, and it's like I never uh, never thought they would.
Yeah. Looking back to those early days, were there things that you did that you now, looking back, realize helped the show to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think just being real with, with sort of the way I try to, maybe do the show. And try to just give people sort of the opportunity to share, just their truth and sort of their story, and just give them that space to do it. I'm not jumping in every second. I'm not making it about me and, look at me and how far I've come and I'm some sort of guru or expert. Like I'm not at all. I'm just a regular dude. I think connecting with other people too that, had an audience of people was helpful, as they would share the show, and sort of that was, that really wasn't being done that much at the time. After I would have people on the show, then kind of, I think they would get on the radar of everybody else that they were willing to kind of do the shows. I think that definitely helped out, and made some really good connections along the way. I mean, one thing that a lot of people probably don't know about the show too is that it's available in, I think it's a few thousand jails and prisons in the U.S. Um, so I gotta. I don't know if I got it or I asked for it, but one or the other, I got the opportunity to have 50 episodes published on, they have like iPads and stuff, in these
Wow.
jails. So that was pretty cool
Wow.
too.
What an impactful opportunity for those people to hear the message,
Hmm.
to hear the redemptive message of people who have been through what they're through and that they can come out the other side. Oh my gosh. That's amazing, Brad.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Now, here's the question that I want to know, and I'm sure other people want to know as well. What did you think was going to work well, but actually turned out not to?
Yeah. um, I mean, I don't know. I think everything works out the way it's supposed to. So like, I don't really, connect how well I'm doing or my value as a person to how well the show does or how well my business does or how well, things are going. And I think that was really important for me because early on I would be obsessed with people are listening or people are checking it out or where are things at. I don't do that anymore. Don't really worry about that kind of stuff. I think at the end of the day, just show up. If you help one person,
Yeah.
that's it. And sometimes it's me, you know? So I think there was definitely a lot of things that, never panned out, but I think that they were getting me closer to maybe what would work.
Andy Ramage said something very much like that, that if your audience is one person who you make an impact for, then all of this is worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
A lot of people underestimate, I think, what it takes to build a community, to
Yeah.
show up consistently. Can you run me through like a day in the life of Brad as it relates to doing all these things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I start with taking the girls anyway to the bus stop.
Uh-huh. That's a great start.
That's how it starts. I mean, it is. It is. I mean, even for me at times, and a lot of people say, I don't know how you do all of this stuff. I don't either. It's a lot of late nights. I mean, when I first started the podcast, I would get a bag of Starburst and I would just edit the podcast when my family went to bed. I'd do it from 10 till I wasn't good at the time and I wasn't using the best of tools. It would take me 3 hours, 4 hours to do an episode. I'd do it from 10 till 2 in the morning and then wake up at 6 o'clock and kind of do it all over. And I mean, for a long stretch, I'm not as consistent as I used to be, but I used to release 2 episodes every week. Sometimes I would do
Mm.
three. So you have the booking aspect of things. Let's just say that's 30 minutes to an hour to find a guest, get everything booked in, answer all their questions. Then you have your recording is an hour. You have your editing, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. Then you have your social media stuff and everything, maybe another hour. So 6 hours. So that's 12 hours a week. Now maybe then it was probably more. Um, of something you put out there. And for 3 years, I didn't. And now I have ads on the podcast, but for 3 years, I didn't make $1. It cost me money for the hosting platform, recording stuff, buying, $1,000 worth of equipment. Um, but you got to start somewhere, with it, and try to build something, and you just kind of go. And it is hard though. Most people it won't stick with it because
Mm-mm.
the problem that what happens is, and maybe this is human nature or conditioning of the world, but what happens is if we have this vision or this number or what we want to receive from our efforts, and if we don't get to whatever that is, we quit. We just quit on it, right? We don't keep going.
Why bother? Right.
Yeah, why bother? It's not reaching our expectation. But I think what's important and what has really helped me throughout all of this is like drown out the noise of where I should be. Because where do I even come up with that in the first place? Probably scrolling on social media and everybody wanting to help me grow my podcast and everything else. And this is where I should be. And this is where they are. So scale it back and cut out all the noise and just say, hey, you know what? Like, what makes this worth it for me? And that has really helped me keep going because there's always going to be somebody better, faster, stronger, more downloads, more money, hanging out on a beach, sipping mocktails, and it's going to appear like a better life. But I think we're all understanding too the highlight reel that social media can be and how things really are. Um, in comparing ourselves to where everybody else is at is just we're going to lose every time because we'll always find somebody who's further ahead.
I'm so glad you said that. And I kind of wanted to bring up a question to you, but first let me respond to that, which is, in an effort just to learn my craft better, I joined a podcast group on Facebook and I went to a podcast conference and I, watched videos of other podcasters and all of the conversations center around likes and subscriptions and shares and all of that, which if you want to get sponsors, of course, that's what they look at as well as the metrics, but we're in a different space. Being in the sober space, we're in a space where people might not feel safe doing those things. They might
Mhm.
not feel ready to put a comment on something on YouTube that other people can see. They might not feel ready to subscribe to something because they're just not sure where they are in their journey. So that leads me to the question of how do people interact with you as a result of seeing your podcast? And how do you think that they're overcoming that barrier of feeling safe to comment on something in a public forum?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who don't do that and might not ever do that. But a lot through email, a lot through the forum on my website. Um, I mean, every day, probably somebody drops a note about where they're at in their journey and how the stories are helping them see what's possible for themselves. But yeah, even what you talked about too in 2005, like, hey, we've made a lot of progress since then for sure. But it's still a real deal for people out there, hiding in the shadows. And that's why I think the Quit Lit, the podcast, it gives people a real opportunity to see what is going on out there without everybody knowing. And I think that's a good place to start, for a lot of people, is just to see, right? Like, what are other people saying about this? Like, my story seems to sound a lot like theirs as well. And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, with a lot of the insights to let grow a podcast, I like to focus on what I can control, which isn't a whole heck of a lot, but it's a few things. Other than if somebody subscribes, I can't control that. If they comment, I can't control that. If they like the thing, I can't control that. If they review it, I can't control that. I can ask them to, but I can't control it. So I really just try to dial in sort of what I can to hopefully make it a good show. And I think when we do it, and I got stuck here too and lost in this about how do I control all of that other stuff to make this grow like all of the gurus, and maybe less focused on like, hey, maybe what can I do personally do different to get me to achieve my goals, but also have realistic ones as well. And I mean, with the new update of Apple and everything, you can't track people as much. So a lot of podcasters just look at their downloads, but it's literally the worst thing to look at to assess how well your show's doing, because you can't track downloads anymore like you used to be able to. Like, people just turn it off. I have mine turned off so nobody can track
Mhm.
what I do. And a lot of podcasters like, oh, well, I'm not making any progress. And you have to zoom out a little bit and look at the different platforms and the tools and other things too to really get a full picture of what's going on.
And you bring up a really good point because I think that, the algorithms of all these things are fed by interaction, and yet the interaction is harder and harder to actually track. So when we get caught up in that mess of chasing numbers and all of that, it can be really discouraging. But at the same time, I mean, you now do have sponsors. Like, it's harder for people, I think, to know how to move past the stage of this passion project and get into a place of how to attract sponsors when numbers are what they respond to. Do you have anything to add or sort of talk about that aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a huge shift in sort of how people are sponsoring podcasts too. Like, it's really come way down. I mean, you had the COVID era, right, where everybody, businesses, and I mean, not everybody, but there was a lot of money floating around. That's not the reality anymore. And even in the virtual, sort of not virtual but digital space of things, it's not the reality. I mean, economies everywhere taking a hit, things are tightening up. So companies are not really willing to take a risk as much anymore that they can't really track. That's sort of the thing with podcasts, is you can sort of, but not as clean as say Facebook ads or Meta or whatever, TikTok ads. Um, I would say if that's the strategy for the podcast is to get sponsors, very difficult, very difficult to do. Because it's not really going to pay probably enough to cover a vast majority of people's subscriptions to keep the show going. But I mean, the best idea for running a podcast is like, what are you going to build from it? Is it going to be retreats? Is it going to be mentorship or coaching? Is it going to be courses? Is it going to be, what else is sort of going to be the thing that you can most help people with would be the focus, I would say.
If you want to monetize it, yeah. Or understand that this is a passion project and you do it as a way to give back.
Yeah.
And like you said, circling back, I love what I do. I love this. It's fun. And it is this part of it is a passion project for me, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. And that's perfectly okay too.
So thinking about this being our 100th,
Yeah.
when you were at that space, what surprised you about getting to 100 episodes? Or
Yeah.
what was sort of your headspace in that moment?
I think, wow, got to 100 episodes. What the heck is going on here? Are there going to be any other people to interview? Is there going to be anybody left? I mean, just to keep going. That's just to keep going. Like I was just really invested in the idea of sharing stories and in trying to help people. I've always taken the approach with my show is not it's not an advice show. It's not telling people what to do. It's just sharing how other people have done it, what it's been like for them, what it was like for them. And I feel like that's really been my lane. I think there's great
Mhm.
things you can listen to out there that'll give you, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I feel like without somebody being able to relate to, that person who's giving sort of the advice or direction relate to their story, then I don't know that it really hits. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think it would just to kind of keep going and look back and be proud of the progress we've made. It's surprising too. It's like, wow, 100 episodes that live on, hopefully longer than I do, or 270 now.
Yeah. It's amazing that you've done that many. I can't believe you were doing two or three a week. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I started out at every other week, and that felt like warp speed, and now I'm up to every week and have been for a couple of years. Um, and what's interesting, and I don't know if you experience this as well, is like as you sort of get into a rhythm and as people learn more about you and as people hear you more, then people start approaching you about coming onto the podcast. And so the flywheel does start to move easier and faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, it builds on sort of each other.
Um, when you look at the landscape of where things started when you started podcasting and where things are today, what do you see that either this space needs or where do you think it might be going? Like, what do you see? Like
Yeah,
from your standpoint, where are we going?
video. That's where we're going. We're already kind of there. Apple's adding video as well. In the near future should be. It's here for some podcasts, but not available for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, and I think video is it. When I first started it, I said I want people to cut the grass, drive to work, maybe do their makeup, and listen to the show. So I was like, no video. I didn't do any video really at all, probably up until the last 2 months.
Oh.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would record with video, but I didn't publish the videos. And then I recently started YouTube. I took YouTube seriously a month ago, and I've accumulated as many watch hours as I do on Spotify in 1 month that it took me the 4 years to do.
Mhm.
So I think that's it. I think that's where it's headed. I think that there's so much sort of AI stuff floating around, good, bad, indifferent, that people are really looking for honest, vulnerable conversations from real people that aren't scripted, that aren't fancy, that are just regular, everyday stuff. Hear people's stories, connect, say, I can relate to that. So yeah, I think the video is sort of it's already kind of the push, but I think that it's really going to be the big push. podcasters have video,
Mhm.
is really going to help them out on the platforms.
I didn't know any better, so I started video from day one. But I was
Yeah,
excited
there
when
you go.
Spotify just added it this year, and that
Yeah.
was exciting. So yeah, it's and I think what you're saying too is that people are longing for authenticity.
Hmm.
People are longing to be able to hear people's real stuff
Yeah.
and not the carefully curated, the carefully produced, the carefully edited. Like they just want to hear people's real stuff. And it's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why we don't do podcast editing other than dropping in the intro because I want it to be exactly as it was in the moment for anybody else who's listening. Um, and I think that, you know, could it be slicker? Maybe, but this is the lane that I chose to go into is just welcoming you into the room with us while we're having this conversation.
Yeah. That was beautiful. And you do an incredible job.
Oh,
It
thank you.
makes a lot of sense that you stuck around to hit 100, and it'll be incredible to see what 200 looks like, right?
Can't
Pressure's
wait.
on.
Last thing, Brad, how has this formed who you are today, being a
Oh,
podcaster?
yeah. Being a podcaster, it sounds like such an official title. Um,
You've earned it.
yeah, I mean, it's, it's done a lot for me in life and in podcasting and connecting and hearing people's stories. I mean, definitely better understanding of how this impacts people and how it looks so much different, but all looks a lot alike. Um, and just getting to meet people, rooting for them. I've had people on the show who went back to drinking or whatever. But just rooting for people. Like I kind of come from the place too. Like, I mean, the amount of days and years and all that stuff, that's great. But I don't know that I care as much about that as like, how is somebody doing today? Like, where are you at today? Like, that's cool. But I've met people with 10, 20 years, miserable. And I've met people with 3 days and I'm like, man, you're just a rocket ship, man, ready to take off. So I think it's, sometimes in my podcast, I don't even ask people. It's like, when did it turn around for you? If they mention it, they mention it. If I'll go back to the edits. I say, oh man, I don't even know. But it's not my main thing. It's definitely helped me sort of look at things maybe a little bit differently too. And just really have that empathy for people, support people, love on people. And like, it's all good. Like, it's all good when people are trying their best out there. We do the best we can with what we have and what we know, and that evolves over time. And kind of how I got choked up with the email I got too, like just a lifelong friend out of that, out of that email that, people you mentioned earlier about AA and rehab. People I talk to, they would die before they ever go to either. Um, and I'm glad there's something else out there for them. Lots of other things out there for them because they are not going to go that route. And that was this person's story. She's a doctor, um, professor, and not going to go to those places. And she would just walk and listen to the show.
Mm.
So you learn more about yourself too. I think the more I share and the more I kind of connect the dots, even 16 years later, it just, you're locked into it. Right. And it's not
Yeah.
like sobriety is like, oh, I'm not drinking today or I'm not using today. It's like, how much juice can I squeeze out of this lemon today? You know? So you grow. And that's why I say everybody should have a podcast to talk about things that they love, to learn, to grow, to connect with other people.
I love that so much. There's something really fitting to me about having this conversation at the episode 100 because I feel like what we've talked about today, Brad, is that what this what this podcast has been quietly doing along the way is that it's not just about sobriety, but it's what happens when you are willing to use your voice. And I can say for myself, 100 episodes in, as somebody who never talked about my sober
Yeah.
choices, like I understand something that I didn't understand at the beginning. You don't start because you have a burning bush moment, or you don't start because you have this super clarity idea of what things are going to be.
Yeah.
You do start because something feels important enough to say. And along the way, over time, you kind of figure out what that becomes. And so to me, maybe like that's the big takeaway at this point is
Yeah.
that whether you're thinking about starting something or wondering what your next step is, you don't need the full roadmap, right?
Yeah.
You just
Mhm.
need to be willing to start. Just put pen to paper and start that book, or record a video of yourself of an honest moment, or buy the Yeti microphone and get on Zoom and record your first episode
Yeah.
and let things unfold, to use your words, the way that they were meant to.
Yeah. Start before you're ready. It's a great, it's a
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you came on here. Cheers to you and to all that you're doing and to all of the impact that you're making. And thank you for spending this big day with me and with us and being willing to kind of share a little bit of behind the scenes about your journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And again, huge congrats on 100 shows.
Thank you. And for those of you who are listening, I would love it if you would subscribe or would share or would comment. But mostly, I just want to thank all of you who have been along the ride and who have spent time with us, and invite you to 100 more. See you next week.